Okay, Gary. I think this is very interesting. I think we're getting somewhere. Let's start off with the whole the way arguments can get circular and stuff. I find when I don't talk to you for a couple months, when things start to just get like, well, we're saying the same thing. After a while, it changes. Not only do we forget and have to restate, so even if the idea that we're really going to get to the same conflict were going to happen, it would take a while. But what happens when it takes a while to get to that same conflict, often the conflict isn't necessarily the same. In spite of your protestations that aren't here to learn, you are learning both while you're here, and I think there's some evidence from you're here. And I don't mean anybody's teaching you their ideas. I mean you learn that this is the comeback that someone comes with, and you're learning to make your argument stronger. So that's an autodidactic form of learning that you are, implicit, at least unconsciously knowledgeable about, right? Because you go through that process. For everybody, autodidactic, of course, is just self-learning. Self-directed learning, rather. Okay. So when you come back, often you don't get to the same thing. I mean, I have come back after a couple months of not talking to somebody, and yeah, they have similar opinions, it can be categorized similarly, but generally they are stating them differently. Okay. So anyway, one thing you say is, you said if we don't manage, no one will. See, I agree with that. It's just that the difference is that I think we were created. I mean, no, let's put it this way. If we manage it and make it a better thing, we emphasize what we consider positive, make it a better thing for us. That is sort of the DNA's plan. Not to make the world better for humans, but that living implementations of it, the DNA, can make the world better for that living implementation. It's like the bacteria that came and filled the atmosphere up with oxygen just did it because that was a waste product of theirs. We use that, and some other creature could use some other gas to make things better. We want clean air with a good amount of readily available oxygen. Okay, and the DNA is into that, animals changing their environment. Now, only a conscious animal could really intentionally change its environment to be good for itself in some abstract idea, but we see that all animals build homes, and that's basically making a local environment better for yourself. Now, you said you think there's 3 layers of reptile, ape man, basically. And I agree with that, but I like your bacteria with brains idea, and I think it goes deeper. There's another 3. It's like we have a bacterial aspect. We still do. It's way out of our reach of our common understanding. It's non-verbal. So, we don't really deal with it in our conscious thought verbally, but of course it's affecting everything. This is approach. And also mold and plant. And maybe those aren't quite the right categories, but I'm thinking of, okay, there's bacteria. Then there's when bacteria sort of clump together in communities. They're not necessarily very organized, but they start to evolve into the fact that their environment is their relatives. Okay, and then the plant is just, I'm thinking, or fungus or whatever, is where you start to have something that looks like single-celled life forms in a organization where there starts to even be some specialization. The single cells towards the edge might serve a different purpose than in the middle. Sometimes, and in the plant, I'm sorry, I was getting confused with the mold. But anyway, so a plant is where that definitely happens. And there's specialization, and yet there's not this reptile type brain. And I don't know where insect would go in there either. Okay. But, and which ones really we should consider evolutionary bias. I guess I could have made that simpler by adding that I think that there is this, bacterial or plant element as well. The reptile one starts to be like the first consciously accessible one, because the reptiles have a certain amount of consciousness. They see an object and know that's an animal. I can eat it. It can eat me. They know that. Okay, whereas the plant's just like, whatever, So, yes, I agree we could talk about the DNA having this thing for reproduction. And I agree with that. But the thing is, when you take a subset of reproduction, Oh, I very much like the idea that you said there is some structure. You're calling it an agenda. Really, it's a structure that leads towards a goal. I agree. But of course, the tricky part becomes the intentionality. But reproduction is an interesting way of restating the survival thing, because you can state it that way, because then survival becomes just a necessity to have a chance to reproduce. And I think this is really a lot what the DNA wants. But we have to understand that in a subset, the DNA does want a life of a certain amount of goodness, or it leads to that. Its structure and implied agenda leads to that. That's why, as I was saying, we have animals that don't want to reproduce in captivity. It's hard applying this to humans because we'll reproduce in just about any circumstance. We will wait things out, if nothing else, okay? But as I said, it goes with that is the spirit to be free that humans have, that we will wait 100 years and have our generations and our children wait and still fight to be free after that. Okay, so now this leads into this idea of survival. When I'm not saying that survival is really good, I'm just saying it's automatically attached. Like objectively a good thing. Survival might be bad. Survival of the Nazis led to a lot of bad things. Okay, I'm not saying survival is good. I'm saying we are by necessary logic attached to the survival. It is built into the DNA. And in subsets, it does include the quality of life. And you said that the DNA is only out for the self. Once it gets in your body, it's out for you. Oh, no, it's not. It's out for its relatives more than you. That's the problem, right? It's out for its relatives more than you. Because think about it. You say it's only for itself. Well, if it's only for itself, then when it creates a copy, it's going to create that copy for it selfishly too. But you just said that copy is only for itself. So it's for itself and for the benefit of others. And you see this evidence of this all throughout the kingdom of the DNA life forms, that there's sacrifice, for example, in female bees that don't reproduce. Why do they work so hard in sacrifice when they can't reproduce? What would be the bioevolutionary explanation of why they would work so hard in a way that usually only work for your offspring? Well, genetically, I think it is that 75% related to the queen. So they are, the DNA will create individuals that do nothing but really work for the offspring through a sister, close relative. So it definitely seems to be systematic, because the need to reproduce means that it's not just for the individual. Okay, and I think this is what leads to material social moralities and shared ideas of survival. And it works rather well when you think about that. If the human beings want to breathe clean air, we're going to have to make clean air for all the other mammals and all the other animals that want clean air to breathe as well. Okay, that's because of this close relation and because we are part of a whole. Now, I don't think that the DNA intentionally wants this, but yes, we are filling a niche where we should be the caretaker. I agree, we have to manage it. But I believe that is to be told this way. We've been given the brain, like wings, that we do not use and do not yet fly. And if we fly, we can manage and make this world a more positive place for not just us, but all of our closer relatives in the DNA family, meaning all the way out to plants and just most bacteria even. And we can make this the kind of place that they want to survive, preferentially to ourselves and mammals and reptiles and birds and insects and plants, land plants and sea plants, and really the only one left out of a good ecology like that are the really tough bacteria that and so on, and algae and stuff that want to live off of that can live off of our pollution. So I thought it was very interesting you said we're a transition species. I agree very much, and that's sort of the point of why we need to realize that we're going somewhere, and the somewhere is to a more enlightened world where, yes, we're going to make the world more positive, and that will be the DNA making the more world positive. But really, the proper way to put it is that the DNA allows us. It gives us the tools to have this chance, almost like a biblical God might be said to. But it's also just as disinterested as that biblical God. It's kind of like, it sort of doesn't care if you make it or not. And yet that's fair, because it's given you, especially if you're human, where you do have some amazing tools to survive, and you're very resilient. So you know, how can you not say, well, thanks for the tools, I guess you don't owe me anything else after giving me that chance? I have more to say, but it's over.